his extended shield, which covers the entire front of his body. He is easily the most effective at getting he's the best at getting maybe not as big, but he can make more holes. But guess what? He can refill, excuse me. Hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode by Surge Media. This time, we're going to be discussing and ranking all of the operators from worst to best in Terrorist Hunt. So not multiplayer, just Terrorist Hunt. And when I say ranking the operators, I'm mostly specifically talking about their primary gadgets. The only time I will mention the weapons and their effectiveness is if the weapon is literally physically attached to the primary gadgets and it's a big part of that operator's identity, or if the primary gadgets are equally as bad and, it's kind of a toss-up. But otherwise, we're specifically focusing on the primary gadgets, so, operators with really good weapons might be lower on the list because their primary gadget isn't quite as useful. Alright, if you haven't checked out my 2018 video, that's not necessary, you don't need to watch it. This is kind of its own video that's isolated, but it will give a little bit of context to some of the decisions. I might reference my 2018 video and my ranking on that, but this is meant to be like an updated version that's kind of meant to replace that old version. So yeah, like I said, you don't really need to watch it, but if you have watched it, it'll make a lot more sense. So, let us begin. Number 31. Dokkaebi. Dokkaebi is literally useless, just like she was in 2018. Absolutely no changes. She's just as bad for the exact same reasons. The terrorists don't have phones that you can call, so you don't get any information from calling their phones. You get nothing. And when you kill them, they don't have phones, so they don't drop phones for you to hack and get into the camera feed, because there's no camera feed. So, for all of those reasons, Dokkaebi is literally useless, and the only reason why you would ever go Dokkaebi is simply just because she has the Boss G or the Mark 14, and you just want to mess with those weapons. Otherwise, there's pretty much no reason at all for you to want to be going Dokkaebi in terms of, her gadget. Number 30. Jackal. Now, in 2018, Jackal was actually pretty useful. He would be able to scan and find the footprints of bombers, which was actually kind of nice. Sometimes the bombers will like to sneak up on you and you don't know where they are, so, and they're very explosive, obviously. So, if you see their footprints, you can be like, oh, there's a bomber in this area. And you can scan their footprints and be like, oh, okay, so the bomber is exactly right there. That is useful. Well, guess what? Now there are no bombers, which means he is 100% useless. He does absolutely nothing to benefit the team. In fact, turning on his little visor just makes it harder for you to see. The only reason why he's above Dokkaebi is because, in my personal opinion, Jackal has way better weapons, especially considering that he has the shotgun secondary, which is very useful for, breaking hatches and getting into specific areas. Number 29, Nook. I mean, same problem with Dokkaebi. There are no camera feeds for you to be silent to. Terrorists, they don't listen to sound, so they don't care if you're quieter or not. The only remotely benefit, which there is a very slight benefit, which is why she's above Dokkaebi and Jackal, otherwise she would be at the very bottom, because I think her weapon selection is the weakest out of the three. But the only reason why she's slightly above Jackal and Dokkaebi is the very, very minuscule usefulness of when you, yourself as Nook, are using her ability and you're walking at full speed, you are quieter, which makes it easier to hear other sounds. Instead of your footsteps being relatively loud, at least you're quiet, which makes it so that, you can more easily hear terrorists, maybe placing shields or nitro cells or shuffling around or placing reinforcements and whatnot. It makes it slightly easier to hear it. Now, obviously, that is not very useful at all, which is why she's at number 29, but yeah, she is not very useful at all. She's at number 29 spot for that exact reason. Number 28, Blackbeard. Now, I was debating on putting Blackbeard at number 29 or number 28 because he's going to be, in the Crimson Heist update, completely useless. Back when he had a 50 HP shield, you know, which is, as of me recording this right now in the Neon Dawn update, when he has a 50 HP shield, it's pretty sometimes useful. You know, it would take 2 or 3 shots a lot of the times, because, you know, 50 HP is not insignificant, and you know, it would be relatively useful for getting out of very specific circumstances. Overall, even back in 2018, he wasn't great, because you only get 2 shields. Once they get destroyed, you pretty much provide nothing to the team, no benefit whatsoever. And now that he's going to be having a 20 HP shield, he's going to be virtually useless. Now, the only reason why I put him above Dokebi, or sorry, above Nook, is because at least the shield does something in terms of protecting you. Protecting yourself from one shot isn't a lot, but at least it's something, right? Being able to hear enemies more easily isn't really anything, because you could just crouch walk, and you could crouch walk at very high speeds if you really wanted to hear. Plus, this game in Terrorist Hunt is definitely not very heavily emphasizing stealth in any way. Blackbeard at least protects 1 bullet, which is almost useless, but at least something more than what Nook, or sorry, yeah, that's great, than what Nook brings to the table. Number 27, Ying. Yeah, Ying isn't great. She has Candelas. She has 3 Candelas, which are pretty decent, right? Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the Candelas are bad. What I am saying, though, is that why would you bring Ying with her Candelas when you could just bring another operator who has something else other than Candelas and a flashbang? When the flashbangs also can be refilled. Think about it. Candelas, you know, with Ying and the Candelas, she has a limited supply of them, right? She has 3, that is it, and they cannot be refilled, and that's it, that's all she brings. Where if you bring somebody with flashbangs, they have their primary gadget, along with having flashbangs that basically do the same thing. Now, of course, the big difference between the Candelas and the flashbangs is that the blinding radius of the flashbang is a lot less than with the Candela. But because you don't have that benefit with, like, in regular multiplayer, there's a distinct difference why you bring Ying. Obviously, the big difference is that with Ying, regardless of whether or not you look at it in, you know, actual multiplayer, right? If you're the one getting stunned or flashed by Ying, regardless of whether or not you look at the Candela, you will get flashed. Even if you're looking 180 degrees in the opposite direction of the Candela, you will still get flashed, which is useful. But in Terrorist Hunt, when the terrorists get flashed, regardless of whether they're looking at it or not, there's no real reason to bring Ying over just another operator with a flashbang. Number 26, Nomad. Nomad is actually really good in multiplayer. She's one of my favorite operators. But in Terrorist Hunt, not so much. She has 3 air jabs, that can knock over, you know, potentially more than 3 enemies if she knocks over, you know, more than 1 enemy in a single air jab. But that's it. Just 3. Not very useful at all. There's basically no reason at all why you would bring Ying over a Claymore, except for maybe if you're playing on hard difficulty or realistic difficulty, because with Claymores, you can refill them, right? So, sure, you only have 1 Claymore, but you can refill them and get up to, you know, 5 or 7 or infinite Claymores, depending on the difficulty. So, yeah, there's not really any reason that you would bring a, there's not really any reason at all that you would be bringing a Candela, or sorry, not a Candela, an air jab, because, like I said, the air jabs knock over the enemies. Claymores straight out kill them. And the terrorists aren't, like, wise enough to, like, look and see, there's a Claymore, and shoot it. No, they'll just run into it, right? They're just blindly following their programming. They will run into Claymores if you place them. So, yeah, there's no real reason at all to bring an air jab. The only reason why she's above the people above her is because at least the air jab is unique in an aspect that, you know, it knocks over enemies, which is kind of nice. Plus, she has 3 of them, right? Like I said, you can't bring 3 Claymores with you automatically, so, you know, at least she has some kind of uniqueness to her. But like I said, no real reason to bring Nomad over just somebody with claymores and then just use the refill station. Number 25. Thatcher. Yeah, Thatcher used to be pretty good. If you go back to my 2018 video, he was up there-ish. He wasn't bad because there used to be the giant clusters of nitrocell. You remember them, right? There used to be like 12, 13, maybe even more, I don't know, nitrocells all grouped up together in this small area, and Thatcher's EMP would destroy all of them. It wouldn't disable all of them, it would flat out destroy all of them, which was very nice, because, you know, of course you could use frag grenades, right? You could throw a frag grenade in there and it would kind of do the same thing, but the frag grenade explosion radius is a lot less than the Thatcher EMP radius is, or at least was at the time that I made that video. However, things have changed. There is no longer nitrocell rooms, so that is a pretty major nerf to Thatcher. Also, there's no more bombers. I mentioned earlier how, you know, if you're in a bad situation, like, for example, if, you know, if there's a bomber coming after you and you run out of ammo in both your primary and secondary, you can just panic and throw an EMP and it'll disable the bomber. Of course, it was generally more effective to just shoot the bomber in the face, but if you, like I said, run out of ammo, throw the EMP, it'll disable the bomber, no problem. Well, guess what? There's no bomber, there's no nitrocell rooms, so the only usefulness of bringing a Thatcher is to disable EMPs. Disable nitrocells. It won't destroy the nitrocells, it'll just disable them. Now, of course, in some maybe sort of realities, you can throw an EMP into a room and be like, oh, I disabled a nitrocell. That must mean there's a nitrocell nearby. Because unlike frag grenades, EMPs will go through walls, so, you know, if there's a nitrocell behind a counter, you can throw the EMP in front of the counter and it'll disable the nitrocell behind it, which is something you couldn't do with a frag grenade. But nitrocells are so far and few in between, the vast majority of the time, you are just better off shooting them. Plus, you only get 3 EMP grenades anyways, so there's not much use to bring in Thatcher at all, which is why he's so down on the list. Number 24, Capitao. Capitao suffers a lot of the same problems where there's not really a lot of uniqueness to him. There's no real reason to bring a Capitao over, you know, most other operators if you think about his primary gadget. Of course, we're only talking about primary gadgets, as I mentioned before. So, he has the asphyxiation bolts, or the fire bolts, whatever they're called now, which light an area on fire and will kill enemies. The problem is that you have to be looking directly at the area that you're going to be lighting on fire, which means it's not like a set it and forget it gadget like air jabs. The other problem is that the fire bolts don't last for a very long time, and they don't even do a whole lot of damage. So, obviously there are some circumstances where you can bring Capitao and he'll be useful, but at the end of the day, you're just better off bringing someone else. If you're trying to, like, set up an area and light it on fire, so that way, you know, anybody who tries to, for example, disable the diffuser will be lit on fire and they'll die, cool, you can do that, that's fine. But you could also do that with a frag grenade. There's not really any circumstances where, you know, you would bring a Capitao that would be able to provide more benefit than other operators could with the same utility. Plus, with his primary gadgets, he only has 2 of each, and they can't be refilled. For example, with the smoke grenades, the smoke bolts, useful, don't get me wrong, well, somewhat useful. They don't, the terrorists don't really seem to care about whether or not you're in a smoke grenade. They seem to just, you know, if you're in their general vicinity, they will shoot at you regardless of whether or not you're in a smoke grenade. So, you know, and I've played Terrorist on a bit, and I've seen instances where sometimes it did work and sometimes it didn't work. I'm not exactly sure. But regardless, you only get 2, and they can't be refilled. Whereas if you bring a smoke grenades, they can be refilled. So yeah, Capitao, you know, he has some uniqueness to him with the bolts that can light an area on fire, and you know, they're very small, so you can shoot them, you know, through bullet holes. But other than that, just bring frag grenades and smoke grenades if that's what you need. Number 23, Callie. Now, Callie is one of a few operators where I will mention her primary weapon simply because it's just a huge part of her primary gadget. Not only is it physically attached to her primary gadget, It's also her only weapon. Her, like, a big part of Callie's identity is her sniper rifle, so I feel like I need to mention the sniper rifle. I can't just talk about the lance, I have to mention the sniper rifle just because it's such an important and integral part of who Callie is. Now, the sniper rifle is not great. Now, as of Neon Dawn, it's trash. It sucks. It takes multiple shots to kill a single person. As of Crimson Heist, it's better. It's a lot more consistent. So, there is a logic and reason for you to be able to bring Callie if you really want insta-kills. Also, with Callie, she has the largest range of all of the sniper rifles. So, depending on your setup, and if you're playing with multiple people, you could definitely make a setup work where you have Callie at a very, very, very far distance, super safe, and you have another player going in and, planting the diffuser and whatnot. Now, obviously, the two big reasons why she's so low is that her lance, not very useful. She has 3 shots with the lance, which can destroy 3 shields. The lance is only useful for destroying shields, because that's the only gadgets that the terrorists bring. So, yeah, you can destroy 3 shields. Whoop-de-doo. But like I said, she's only ever really useful in terms of, being actually effective if you have another teammate with you, and they go in and, like I said, plant the diffuser or bring the hostage or whatever, and Callie is all the way back at a very far distance, super safe, and she's able to take out the enemy safely. So, which, don't get me wrong, is a good strategy, but the fact that she pretty much requires another player in order for her to be remotely useful, that's why she's so far down on the list. Number 22, Zofia. Zofia suffers a lot more now than she used to. Back in 2018, she was really good for one reason. Even back in 2020, even early 2021, I think. I don't remember exactly what happened. But for one reason, she lost Withstand. Now that she lost Withstand, she is not very useful in Terrorist Hunt. With Withstand, very often, if you're playing on normal or hard difficulty, she would very often, instead of dying, go down where she could then revive herself. Even when you're playing by yourself, if you went down, you could revive yourself as Zofia, which was very useful. I remember using Zofia specifically because of her Withstand in a number of situations, because you basically get a second life. You get shot down, you would normally die, you withstand, you're good. Without Withstand, she's a mediocre combination of a couple of different operators, right? What does she have? She has the KS-79 lifeline, right? She has 2 impacts, which is less than Ash has. So she is able to destroy less walls. Of course, she has breaching charges, but once again, we're specifically talking about her primary gadget, right? Why would you bring the KS-79 when you could just bring a breaching charge? Unless if you want to get it at range, but if you want to do it at range, just bring Ash. She has more rounds to work with. Okay, sure. Her KS-79 also has a concussion, which is actually moderately useful. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really do much more than a flashbang. The only difference between a flashbang and the KS-79's concussion in terms of, attacking the terrorists, obviously there's a big difference in multiplayer, but in terms of Terrorist Hunt, the only difference is that the KS-79 will detonate beforehand. So you can shoot the KS-79 concussion and it'll detonate if there's an enemy in there. Whereas, if you're playing regular Terrorist Hunt and if you're playing with a flashbang and you throw a flashbang, the flashbang will detonate at the exact same amount of time regardless of whether or not there's an enemy nearby or not. Which, like I said, sure, that's a benefit to the KS-79, but it's not much better than bringing a flashbang, and flashbangs can be replenished. So why would you bring Zofia anymore? Like I said, back when she had Withstand, she was a top tier. Now that she doesn't have it, there's pretty much no reason to bring her. Number 21, Ash. Speak of the devil, Ash, not much better. Sure, with Ash, Zofia, Callie, we put them all in a row because what is the primary usefulness of their primary gadget? They can destroy shields. Okay, that's kind of cool, but you can also do that with frag grenades, which can be replenished. Okay, well, with Zofia and Ash, they also can make holes in walls, and so can a breaching charge. So, if you really want ranged breaching rounds, if you really need it to be ranged, sure, you can go with Ash. And I think the explosion radius is relatively decent, so, if they're disabling the diffuser, you can shoot an Ash breaching round relatively close to where, the terrorists are, and it'll stop them from destroying the diffuser. So, fair enough. but also, you know, just bring frag grenades or breaching rounds. There's not really any reason. Now, of course, the benefit of Ashe, which is why she's relatively high up on the list, is because, you know, if you, instead of having to choose between frag grenades and breaching rounds, she can do both, which is good. But at the end of the day, you only get 3 shots, so yeah, just think about that in terms of your setup. Number 20, Recruit. Recruit now is actually pretty good. Old Recruit, back when he had no attachments on any of his weapons and only had like 1 frag grenade or something like that, like he had limited utility. He didn't have the same amount of utility as all of the other operators. He had reduced utility. For in terms of the Recruit on attack and terrorist hunt now, he's actually pretty good. He can bring all of the new primary gadgets that have come out, so the Hard Breach gadget and the Claymore, I think that's it, right? Just those 2? So he can bring those utilities, and they can all be replenished. So, and he has a pretty decent selection of weapons. Remember, he has an LMG, an assault rifle, a DMR, which with the DMR you can destroy the hatches, so pretty cool. And with the secondaries, he has a secondary shotgun, a secondary machine pistol, a secondary silence pistol. He's got a lot of different stuff going for him. Recruit is actually pretty good. Now, obviously, the big focus that I would like to focus on, the big point I would like to focus on, because, you know, I said I'm not going to talk too much about the weapons, but I feel like I need to mention, once again, his gadgets can be replenished. So you can bring a frag grenade and a claymore or whatever. I don't know exactly the setups you can bring, but you know, with all the operators above, they had, you know, maybe their primary gadget and then a secondary gadget that they could bring that would fulfill different roles. But you could do the same with Recruit, and they can be replenished at the refill stations. Like I said, Recruit's pretty versatile now, and he's actually a relatively decent pick. Obviously, he's not the best pick because he, you know, isn't the greatest at, you know, doing, like, getting through reinforced walls, for example, and whatnot, but yeah, it's a decent pick. Number 19, Glaz. Now, I will give Glaz a little bit of credit. His ability to see through smoke is pretty nice. I like it. Plus his sniper rifle, and, you know, once again, normally I don't talk about the primary weapons, but with Callie, her weapon was, she had a very large movement penalty, it was a very slow aim down sights time, it was very unwieldy. As of Neon Dawn, the damage sucks and it would require 2 shots to kill. With Glaz, his DMR is pretty decent, or his sniper rifle is pretty decent. You know, 2-shot kills most of the time. And it's got a pretty decent range. You can, you know, take off the flip scope if you're going in close range, which if you're playing Callie, you can't do that. You know, like I said, the flip scope, pretty good. Also, as a bonus benefit, along with Callie, I don't know if I mentioned this in this recording because I recorded this twice, but along with Callie, he can shoot through the plane windows, which is very nice because you can shoot through the plane windows and stop them from destroying the diffuser or whatever the case may be through the window, and they can't shoot back, which is very cool. So yeah, Glaz at least brings, not great, but I would say at least he brings a little bit more to the table in terms of uniqueness that none of the operators below bring them. At least he actually brings something kind of remotely unique. Number 18, Sledge. Now we're getting to the actually decent operators. Now, before all the operators below, I generally wouldn't recommend them in most scenarios. But these operators, now we're starting to get into the actually good operators, right? So we got Sledge, one of the better, you know, he's better than Ashe, Zofia, and all that stuff, right? The big reason, obviously, is that he has 25 hammer hits, which is pretty good. Like, with Ashe, she had 3 shots. With Zofia, she had 2. With Callie, she had 3, right? And she's not even really a soft breacher, but you know what I mean. Sledge, he can hit stuff with his hammer 25 times, and he can destroy shields. And he has frag grenades to destroy stuff from a distance, which can be replenished. The frag grenades can be replenished. Sledge is pretty decent. But of course, you know, the big reason why he's not, like, super high is because you could also bring Buck, and Buck, unlike Sledge, his gadgets can be refilled. Also, breaching rounds, breaching charges, which exist on a lot of different operators, you could just bring a breaching charge. I think maybe with Recruit you can bring a Breaching Charge and a Frag Grenade, but like I said, I can't exactly remember the Recruit combinations. The point is that Sledge actually pretty good. Like, I could recommend him in a number of different scenarios because he has 25 hammer hits. But, you know, he doesn't do a lot in terms of being very unique. So that's why he's in the middle. Pretty smack dab in the middle. Number 17, Thermite. Now we're getting to Hard Breacher City Central. A lot of these next few ones are going to be Hard Breachers. So, Thermite, he's the weakest of all the Hard Breachers. Why? He has 2 exothermic charges, which isn't a lot, and they just create giant holes. So, I'll get into the reason why that's not as great as it could be with the next few operators. But the point is that, like I said, he has 2 exothermic charges, and he has to be up next to them in order to place them, unlike some of the other ones where you can throw them at a distance or shoot them at a distance. And they just create giant holes. And the general problem with Hard Breachers and Terrorist Hunt is that the vast majority of the time, if there's a hard reinforced wall, right next to it is going to be an unreinforced wall. And even if there isn't, there's generally more than one way that you can get into the objective. Almost never. I don't think I've ever seen a room from the terrorists that is completely 100% from all angles, everything is reinforced. There's almost always at least one wall somewhere. Very often many walls in a lot of different places that are unreinforced that you could get through with a breaching charge or with frag grenades or whatever. And like I said, the only reason you would bring it is if you really, really want to make sure that you clear out in a giant area, right? He's not useless, but he's okay if you want to clear out a giant area. Another also downside is that, as I mentioned, he has the exothermic charges and he only has 2. Well, now with the Hard Breach gadget, because there is a Hard Breach gadget in the game now, you could just bring that and refill that. So you can place your Hard Breach gadget, detonate it, go up, refill, place another Hard Breach gadget, detonate it, and you have a pretty decently sized hole. Not as big as a Thermite hole, but it's a hole that you can run through, right? So, not a lot of huge uses for Thermite, but he still has some versatility inside of him. Number 16, Ace. One of the biggest difference, obviously, between Ace and Thermite is that, A, he has 3 Selmas that can destroy 3 different walls, or, you know, more, but like 3 different areas on maybe the same wall or 3 different walls, you know. B, he can throw them closer to the floor, which gives you a huge advantage that I'll mention in a second, but I want to talk about first. C, the fact that you can throw them higher up, and you can use them basically as like, what is it called? Head glitching, right? So you can throw it relatively high up, and then you can peek over the little, like, tiny top of the part that exists, right? And you can peek over it and shoot terrorists on the other side, which is actually pretty useful. You know, you can throw them low, and because terrorists are not programmed and they don't have the ability to go prone, you could throw the Selmas closer to the ground and make it such that you know, you can shoot their feet, and they cannot shoot back. They cannot crawl through the through the Selma hole. They have to just submit and die. That's it. So pretty decent. And once again, he has 3. So the only reason why he's not higher up is because obviously, if you're throwing a Selma at you know, a higher distance, there's the possibility of the terrorists being able to vault over and come and attack you, which kind of defeats the purpose. And the holes are pretty big, which on one hand is good because you can crawl through them and whatnot, but on the other hand, it gives you a little bit less cover to work with. So, ups and downs. However, that is not necessarily the same issue with number 15, Hibana. Hibana is kind of like Ace in the very similar way, but with one distinct difference. She can shoot individually 2 pellets, or 4 pellets, if she chooses. Now, the other difference, obviously, is that you can shoot 4 XOX Kairos and destroy a hatch, whereas it takes 2 Selmas to destroy a hatch. So, yeah, as you can see, you know, there are ups and downs with Hibana and Ace, but the big difference is that if you're going to do the strategy I mentioned of, you know, making a hole close to the floor and shooting the terrorists in the feet, which is a very good strategy, by the way, if you're doing a bomb. It's a very good strategy. I would recommend that. The big difference between Hibana and Ace is that Hibana, she can choose how many pellets she can shoot, and if you shoot only 2, well, instead of Ace, where he has 3 Selmas regardless, with Hibana, you can shoot 2 pellets, and it will, destroy the hole, and you get to do that 8 more times. You get to do it 9 times total, because remember, she has 18 total X-Kairos. If you shoot 2 at a time, you could do it in 9 different spots. So, more versatility, more usefulness, smaller holes, which makes it even harder for them to see through and shoot through, depending on the angle. Yeah, Hibana is slightly better for those reasons. Now, obviously, if you're trying to make bigger holes, Ace would be better, because he can make big holes. He can make big holes and more big holes than Hibana could. But if you're simply just trying to have small little angles that you can shoot through with Hibana, that you can shoot through, Hibana will be a better pick for that reason, and that is why I put her above. But she's pretty close and on par with Ace. I'm recording this while editing the video to mention that, yes, you can indeed somewhat do this with Thermite. If you place exothermic charge on the floor, if it's a breachable floor, next to a reinforced wall, and you detonate it, the explosion radius will be relatively big enough such that, you have a hole at the bottom of the reinforcement, which is useful, don't get me wrong, but also at the same time, you can't do this with every single surface. There's only certain walls in certain locations where you're even able to do this in the first place. So although Thermite can technically do this, that doesn't necessarily make him better than Ace or Hibana in these specific circumstances, because he can't do it as well or as often. And once again, he only has 2 exothermic charges too. Number 14, Lion. Lion used to be really, really good. Back in 2018, you could use his E1D, and it would scan all terrorists. And remember, back in 2018, it was the big red scan, right? Like, it was a full body scan that showed the entire figure of the body. And back then, it would scan them regardless of whether or not they were moving. Even if they were standing still, it would mark them. So you basically had wall hacks. However, Lion has fallen a bit down on the ladder. However, he's still got some usefulness to him. One big upgrade is that he has 3 scans rather than 2. Actually makes a pretty big difference. One of the big changes with the Lion scan, obviously, is that now you have the pings rather than the red outlines. But honestly, for the purposes that you would generally use Lion for, that is totally fine. The big reason, the big benefit of Lion, which is why he's so far up the list, is because after you plant the diffuser, or pick up the hostage, or come down to the last 5 enemies, there's going to be a lot of moving terrorists, right? If you plant the diffuser, there's going to be terrorists from all over the map that are going to be coming to your location. Use your scan, boom, you know where everybody is. If there's 4 terrorists coming outside, you can use your scan and be like, oh, there's 4 terrorists right there. I'm going to break open the window and shoot them because I can see that they're coming. If there was, if you extract the hostage, you can be like, all right, I picked up the hostage. All the terrorists start spawning in and moving and stuff. You can use your scan and be like, okay, they're over there and there and there, right? If you are playing elimination or whatever it's called, once you get down to like the last 5 terrorists, they're all going to be coming to you. So you can use your scan and be like, oh, they're coming in from this way, and kill them. It's actually really nice. Now, the reason why he isn't super high up is because obviously the scans don't last very long at all. They're very short, and the pings don't last very long, and what you can do with your info is rather limited. But it is very nice to just get a general idea of where they are, especially considering, that they have to be moving in order for it to work. Like, if they were standing still, that'd be a different story. If you could scan them while they're standing still, completely different story. But you have to be smart about when you use your scans, because it'll only work if they're moving. So keep that in mind. Number 13, Yana. Now, the big thing with Yana is that she has infinite, what is it called? Gemini replicas, right? Which is kind of like a drone. Now, of course, the reason why she's not super high up on the list is because just use a drone, right? But the big downside of using a drone is that A, if it gets destroyed, that's it, the drone is dead forever, whereas with Yana, she'll always get them back. And B, if you're like trying to move into different locations and advance and push and advance and push, you'll have to keep picking up your drone, or you would have to like go on the drone and move it to your new location, which is tedious. You have to specifically go to where your drone is and pick it up, or you would have to move it from where it is to the new location. And that, like I said, is tedious and annoying. With Yana, you get infinite drones, which the enemies will always focus on, right? So if you're trying to maybe get a distraction, right? Drones, the terrorists will shoot at drones, but it's generally not going to be their number one concern. The terrorist will always shoot at the Gemini replicators because they think it's you. So you could use the Gemini replicator, fool the terrorists into thinking that it's you, go to a different location, distract them, get them looking a different direction, and go and kill them. And like I said, you could do this with drones, but once again, Yana, she can do it wherever she is. You can use your replicator, take out some enemies, go to the other side of the map, and use your replicator. As simple as that. Even if it gets destroyed, you have unlimited of them. So, for those reasons, that is why she is so high up on the list, but not super high, because like I said, you can just use a drone, but she has some usefulness to her. Number 12, Blitz. Oh boy, Blitz has fallen far down from the tree, hasn't he? Back in 2018, he was in the number 2 slot. He was the second best operator, but a lot of changes have made that so that's not really the case anymore. Obviously, the big change is that huge ADS penalty. Now that it takes him so long to aim down sights, he's kind of a liability sometimes because you're trying to go in and take him out, and you know, you aim down sights and it takes like a full 2 seconds. It's not like 2 seconds, but I'm exaggerating, but it's a really long ADS time. Reason number 2 is that there's no bombers. Like, he used to be really good with the bombers. Bombers were actually a pretty decent threat in terrorist hunt. I used to die from bombers all the time. But now that there's no more bombers, he's not as useful, right? Because the big benefit that Blitz had with the bombers is that he could flash the bombers and easily, you know, aim down sights and shoot him in the head. Easy peasy, right? No problem. Now that there's no bombers, he's not very useful. Now, the reason why he's pretty high up on the list even still is because you can still do what most people do in multiplayer. Run up to enemies and melee them. That's actually pretty efficient, right? Because with Blitz, you can sprint and the shield is still in front of you. So he still has that usefulness for you, right? You can be sprinting and charging towards an enemy. Once you get up to them, you can melee them. And the shield is pretty good at covering, because shield operators, they're pretty good at covering, right? So, yeah. Being able to flash enemies, not particularly useful. The ability to sprint and have your shield in front of you, that's actually pretty good. Of course, you can use your flash if there's like 6 enemies in front of you. In fact, that is probably one of the better benefits of the flash, is that if there's a whole bunch of enemies in front of you, you can flash all of them at the same time and take your time, boop, 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 get all 3 kills, or how many ever kills you get. So yeah, Blitz is still pretty high up on the list, but he's no longer anywhere near as good as he used to be. Number 11, Maverick. Maverick has the same benefits as Hibana and Ace in terms of creating small holes that, you know, are very hard to shoot through, and Maverick's holes are even smaller than Hibana's holes. And the big thing why he's so useful is because he can make a lot of holes. Like with Hibana, she can make 9, which is really good, don't get me wrong, but with Maverick, who knows how many you can make? I really don't know. You get 6 canisters, and you can make multiple holes per canister. You can really flesh out the areas, right? You can make a lot of holes in a lot of different places, and you can make it so that, you know, you make a very small hole, and you shoot through it, and it's very difficult for the terrorists to shoot back at you. Or, once again, you could place it at very low, like a very low height, and, you know, you could shoot their feet, and they can't shoot back. They can barely even see it. Both of those things are pretty good. The reason why he's not higher on the list, obviously, is because, once again, there has to be a reinforcement in play. So if you're not going to be, like, actually using the reinforcements, or if there's just no reinforcements in any good spots, you won't really be able to make the most effective use out of Maverick. But out of all of the hard breachers, he's definitely the most useful in terms of making small holes. Now, of course, if you're trying to, like, clear out areas, like trying to make a bunch of different big holes everywhere, Thermite, it will be better, and then Ace, and then Hibana, right? But if you're just trying to make a lot of small holes, which I think is more useful in Terrorist Hunt, Maverick is definitely the best choice. Number 10, Fuse. Now, Fuse is kind of a little bit in the middle in terms of how useful he is. How good he is depends on what mode you're playing. In Hostage, he's a liability. You're going to blow up the hostage. In Elimination, he's good as long as you drone out the area first, right? Like, if you drone out the area, see there's a bunch of enemies in there, you could throw your cluster charge into the wall and detonate it if, there's a good opportunity for you to do that. But where he really shines, where he is the most strong, is when you're playing Diffuse Bomb. Why? Well, depending on the location, you can simply just, place your cluster charge and launch the cluster charge into the room while they're trying to destroy the diffuser. You don't have to place any risk on yourself at all. You don't have to peek through a hole and shoot, which you could do. You can just place the cluster charge, detonate it, and it'll take care of all of the enemies in the area. You don't have to, throw a grenade or anything. It'll do it all by itself, and you get 4 of them, which is really good. The explosion radius is pretty big. And the benefit of that is that you don't have to be, once again, anywhere near it, right? Like, if you want to be in the room helping the diffuser, but you can still have a cluster charge in a location, like if you can place your cluster charge above the hatch, for example. Like, say there's a hatch or there's a wall that you can, shoot your cluster charges through. You can place your cluster charge through the floor, and it'll go through the floor and blow up people, yet you're still on the same floor. So he's pretty useful. But like I said, he's at number 10 because the situations where he can be useful is relatively limited. Because once again, you have to be in a room where, there's at least one penetrable placed. Like, either it's the floor above or, a wall next to somewhere that you can place your cluster charge. You're limited by the location as to how useful you can be. So, but still, when you can make use of him, he is really good at wrecking havoc. Number 9, Amaru. You might actually be quite surprised to see Amaru so high up on the list, but the reason why I think she's so good is because she gives the mobility that you can really use. For example, if you are planting the diffuser, if there is a hatch above you, guess what? You don't have to go and walk up the stairs. Grapple right through the hatch. Boom, you're on the 2nd floor in an instant. Is there a skylight? Grapple right through the skylight instantly. Is there a roof area where you can, shoot through the roof? Grapple instantly onto the roof. Boom. Like in Border, like old Border, right? Obviously, Border is getting changed in Crimson Heist, but, grapple onto the roof, get into a specific angle, and make work happen. She is pretty good in terms of getting into specific locations. She's also pretty good in elimination in terms of, trying to get from location to location, right? Like, if you're killing out some people and you're like, oh no, everything is going to hell, you can grapple through a hatch and boom, you're safe. Or if you're trying to get like a world record or whatever, you can bust right through the window immediately, And, she has a lot of opportunities that are pretty decent and, obviously not the best, but I think that, she is more likely to be useful than most of the operators I mentioned in the past, who either their roles can be fulfilled by something else, or how you are able to use their ability is more situational. Obviously, how you use Amaru's ability is also relatively situational, which is why she's not super high up. But whenever you're able to make use of her grapple, you can really put yourself into good positions that wouldn't be possible otherwise, or would be more long, more tedious, or more dangerous otherwise. Number 8, Buck. Yeah, Buck is really, really good in Terrorist Hunt. For one big reason, his shotgun pellets, or his shotgun ammo, can be refilled. He is the only operator on the attacking team that you can refill your gadgets for, which is something that you cannot do with other operators. Like, you used to be able to do it with Tachanka, right? Back when, Tachanka's had a shield, but now that he doesn't have the shield, you can't do that anymore. So now I'm pretty sure, I'm like almost certain that Buck is the only operator who you can refill the ammo for using the refill stations. So, sure, he can make 26 or 31 holes, right? He can make 31 holes, which is pretty significant, right? He can make more holes than Sludge, potentially. Maybe not as big, but he can make more holes. But guess what? He can refill, But guess what? he can refill his ammo. So now, instead of him making only 31 holes, he can make 62 holes, or how many ever. Like, the world is your oyster, depending on, you know, what difficulty you're on, so how many gadgets you have, right? You could make potentially infinite holes if you're playing on normally and you have infinite resupplies. Plus, the shotgun as a weapon is pretty effective. It's pretty good at killing terrorists. So, you know, if you're in a pinch and you run out of ammo in your primary, switching to your shotgun is very often going to, you know, do it for you, right? You switch to your shotgun, boom, 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 reload. It's very effective. Buck is actually really, really good in terrorist hunt. Really, the only downside of Buck as opposed to Sledge is Buck can't destroy shields, right? He can't destroy deployable shields and whatnot. But like I said, not necessarily the worst thing in the world, right? Very often I'll just use shields to just take cover behind them, right? But yeah, so, you know, back when he had frag grenades, maybe it was more useful, but whatever. I think that he's still very, very good with having shotguns that are effective, or shotgun rounds that are effective and can be replenished by the refill station. Number 7, Zero. Yeah, Zero's surprisingly good in terrorist hunt. He's actually pretty gosh darn good. What you can do in bomb is you can set up your Argus cameras in locations near the bomb, and while they're trying to destroy the diffuser, you can zap the terrorists and it'll stop them from destroying the diffuser. So a very nice common strategy that I like to implement is shooting, you know, 2 or 3 Argus cameras near the bomb, or near the diffuser, and then just hauling ass, going onto the roof, getting into as much cover as possible, and just using my Argus cameras to zap them. They won't destroy the Argus cameras, so you can just zap them, stop them from disabling the diffuser, and you can do that 2 or 3 times. Now, obviously the big downside is that he only has 4 shots with his Argus camera, and you generally have to destroy 2 diffusers. But still, the fact that you can stop them from disabling the diffuser from any time, you know, from any range, at specifically when you want, right? Like, you know, you say with Nomad, oh, you only have 3, but with Nomad, you don't get to choose when the air jabs go off. With Zero, you get to choose exactly when you want to zap them with the Argus camera. Now, you might be wondering, how is Fuse not higher? Well, I was debating on whether I was going to put Fuse higher or not, and I decided to put Zero higher, simply just because he is able to have multiple Argus cameras in the same location and go away, right? He can place multiple cameras at the same time. With Fuse, you can only place 1 cluster charge at a time. If you could place 2 cluster charges, that would be even better, but you can't. So, you can place 1 cluster charge, detonate a couple of enemies, and that's pretty much it, unless if you go back to where you placed your first cluster charge, you're not going to be able to make any use of your second cluster charge. With the Argus cameras, you can place them in advance, and you can zap enemies. You can just use it for intel, right? You can shoot it through the room. Are they in there? Boom, they're in there. You know, that kind of useful. It's useful. He's useful. Number 6, IQ. IQ, her usefulness depends on what mode you're playing on. If you are playing on Elimination or a Hostage, she's alright. Now, obviously, the big thing is that she can, you know, see the nitro cells, right? Which is good, because nitro cells are really annoying. So being able to see exactly where they are and destroy them without having to, like, listen for it or specifically look for it, you can see there's a nitro cell, there's a nitro cell, there's a nitro cell, and shoot it easily. Not too difficult. But where she really shines is in bomb, where she is by far the best and most effective for finding the bomb locations by a long shot. You literally, you know, mostly whenever you play terrorist hunt on bomb, you have to spend quite a bit of time looking for the bomb locations, which normally isn't a huge deal, but with IQ, gadget out, boom, bomb right there. In like 30 seconds, you can find out where both the bomb locations are, and you can come up with your strategy of where you're going to put what before you get into the building, which is very, very nice. So that is why IQ is so high up. Now, like I said, in Hostage and Elimination, her only use is being able to see nitro cells, which, like I mentioned, is very useful because, you know, those nitro cells like to hide in places, and they're really hard to see. Speaking of nitro cells, I just gotta mention, I don't normally ever ask for likes, but this video just took so long to create, with the hours spent editing it all together, you know, trying to record all of the footage, which took so long, especially because I had to try and go in and show examples of exactly what it is that I'm talking about, which took forever. And then the multiple attempts I tried to record this commentary, it took like 2 or 3 attempts. Yeah, this video took absolutely ages. So please, seriously, show support for the video. Nitro sell that like button, and throw down some kind of comments in the comment section. Show support for this video. It would mean a whole lot, because I really want. I wonder if that got picked up in the audio. I don't know. Seriously though, hopefully you enjoy the rest of the video. I just wanted to mention that because this video took so long. And they'll often blow me up without me knowing they're there, and with IQ I can counter that. But she's even more useful in Bomb. Number 5, Gridlock. Gridlock's usefulness once again also depends on what mode you're playing, but if you can make use of where she puts her tracks, she can be a monster. She is particularly amazing in Bomb when you place the diffuser and place tracks all over where the diffuser is. You're forcing the enemies to walk directly onto your tracks. So, it'll often kill them, right? Like the big difference between the air jab, Nomad with the air jab, and the tracks is that once the air jab goes off, it's gone. It doesn't exist anymore. The tracks, you could have as many people stepping on it as can exist, and it will still continue to exist. The tracks do not get destroyed. The terrorists will not shoot them. They will simply just keep walking slowly to their death, stepping on every tracks, taking more and more damage until they die. And even if they don't die, very often they're going to be so weak to the point where they're like one-shot kill. And, you know, which is particularly nice if you want to run the secondary shotgun, right? Because you can position yourself such that you can just shoot one hole through the floor above you or whatever and kill them because they have such low health. Like I said, the tracks really good for damaging and killing terrorists, and you get 3 of them, which is pretty good. If you only got 1, Gridlock wouldn't be good, but with 3, you can really make some work happen. Number 4, Flores. Flores is actually really, really fun. I played a bunch of him in the test server. Yeah, I think he is deserving of the number 4 slot for terrorist hunt. Now, keep in mind, I am specifically talking about Bomb. In other modes, he's still useful, right? With you know, with elimination, you know, they might be camping in corners or whatever. You know, sure, whatever. But when Bomb, oh boy, plant the diffuser, force the enemies to go to his exact position. You can be on the roof, right? A good strategy, actually, is to plant the diffuser, or maybe even have somebody else plant the diffuser, but you can plant the diffuser yourself. You definitely have enough time. You can plant the diffuser, go onto the roof, use your RCE, and just go into the objective, detonate them, and kill a bunch of people. Like, it kills them. And it's a big explosion. Like, I'll very often kill 2 or 3 people while trying to stop the person who's destroying the diffuser. And I'm on the roof, fully covered. And you get 4 of these drones. So you can use 2 per drone. Like, you can use 2 per defuse. And it'll do the job. Because it's, like I said, very effective. Plus, you know, there's also the added benefit, not that I would ever use it, but you can simply just use it to destroy shields, which is nice, or maybe, you know, kill a cluster of enemies that are near each other if you're playing an elimination or hostage. Now, how well you use Flores, obviously, is going to depend on how good he is. If you use him just to kill people, he won't be very good. But if you use him to stop them from destroying the diffuser, he is excellent. Excellent. Very, very good. Number 3, Twitch. Now with Twitch, she is particularly good at stopping the diffuser. She is one of the best, which is why I put her so high on the list. So, with Twitch, as you might remember, she has 2 drones with 3 shots each, which refill themselves over time indefinitely. So, you essentially have 6 shots, right? That refill each other indefinitely. Well, every single one of those tasers that you shoot will stop the diffuser from getting destroyed by the attackers. Or by the terrorists. Every single one. You zap them, it might do 1 damage, but it'll stop them from destroying the diffuser. And you can do that 6 times between the 2 drones. And guess what? Even after that bomb is defused, those 6 shots replenish. Now with 0, you only had 4 shots total that didn't replenish, and that's it, just 4. So relatively useful, pretty good, but with Twitch, 3 times as good, right? It's 3 times as good, because in total you get 4 shots with 0. You could have up to 12 if you play your cards right, as long as you don't like mess up and get your drone destroyed, because they will shoot the drone, so you have to put it in a pretty decent spot. But you could just keep zapping them over and over again. Very, very good. Extremely useful. I would definitely recommend going Twitch in most of your setups. Number 2, Finka. Yep, no real surprise that Finka is really, really good. And by process of elimination, you already know who number 1 is, but we'll get to him in just a second. But yeah, Finka is really strong in Terrorist Hunt. Actually, I would probably say in some situations, she's even more strong than she is in multiplayer. Now, obviously, what are her primary uses, right? She can revive her teammates if they're down. Very, very useful. She gives a huge accuracy boost to all of her team and herself, which is nice. And she can reduce the effect of any kind of concussion or anything like that, right? Say, for example, the enemies are throwing flashbangs. That's actually pretty it actually is pretty annoying getting flashed when you're playing Terrorist Hunt. It's like, oh, really? I have to deal with flashbangs? But guess what? With Finka, that's not an issue. You can just simply, boom, use your stim, flashbang, completely gone, the effect is completely gone, you're perfectly clear, and you can see perfectly. Now, I traditionally wouldn't use it for that reason, but if you want to use it for that reason, you can. And like I said, you get the bonus 20 health, or I didn't mention this, but that's another thing. You get the bonus 20 health, so you can go into gunfights and take a couple of extra shots. And also, like I said, you can revive all of your teammates from, regardless of where they are, from everywhere. All 4 of your teammates can be down. Boom, 1 stim, all of them are revived. Very soon, she might become number 1 after you are able to self-revive, because that would be very, very good. But as of right now, she doesn't have the ability to self-revive. That being said, Finka is somebody you would want on your team the vast majority of the time, unless if you're doing a particular setup that requires specific operators. But yeah, like I said, Finka, top tier. Last but not least, number 1, if you are paying attention, by process of elimination, you already know who it is. It's the same person who it was back in 2018, Mr. Monty. Monty is still so good. Montaigne has, obviously, his extended shield, which covers the entire front of his body. He is easily the most effective at getting he's the best at getting he is the best at getting the diffuser destroyed by a long shot. You can just, plant the diffuser, stand in a corner. If they go to destroy the diffuser, you just shoot them. Put your shield up. It's just a tedious game. He's especially really good with multiple people, but even by himself, you can make stuff happen. I would say he is by far the easiest to use, while also being the most useful and the most effective at trying to get through these Terrorist Hunt rounds. The best part about it, he is useful in every single mode. He's useful in elimination for sneaking up, or not sneaking up, but like going up to terrorists and killing them. He is useful in hostage because while he's running, he has the shield on his back. Oh, there's people coming from in front of you. Drop the hostage, pick up your shield, you're covered. Very useful. So yeah, as I mentioned, Monty is just simply the best. He is the GOAT. He is the king of Terrorist Hunt in Rainbow Six Siege. So that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. It took a long time to record the audio for this. I don't know how I'm going to work out the video for this, but it was really fun to go through and explain my logic for all of the operators, what they do, why they do it. So yeah, I hope you guys thoroughly enjoyed this video, and I will be back relatively soon to do a part 2. Hopefully, last time I said that, it took 2 years, but almost 3 years actually. I'll be back soon to hopefully actually do the part 2, which is Defenders. There's been a lot of new Defenders, and I never even did the 2018 Defender version, so this will be a whole brand new spanking video. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye for now.